This is Subnautica, Below Zero. I was planning on doing a Let's Analyze of it, where I play through the whole thing minute by minute and talk about every second of it, but there are really only two things about this game that I want to talk about, so I figured I'd just make a video covering those two things. I'm going to be spoiling Subnautica Below Zero. I recommend playing it. It's quite good. It's the second best in the genre, with the best, of course, being the original Subnautica. And yeah, I heartily recommend giving it a shot. Don't say I didn't warn you. Here come the spoilers. So the two problems I have with this game are not very serious, but they are continuous and they're extremely distracting. And with my personality, it's hard for me to focus on the good parts of the game when I keep getting annoyed by the two things I don't like. So one of the two problems I have is play. In the original Subnautica, there were a lot of times where I really had to plan my dives out. I would have to go out of my way to set things up or to do very carefully rationed dives, you know, go back and then go out again, then go back and then go out again. Or even do something like try desperately to get my ship through a canal that's too small for it or whatever. That just doesn't happen in this game. Maybe you can play it like that if you don't realize how the mechanics of the game actually work. But so far I've only found one particular situation where I had that experience, and it was in one little station on a floating rock. And everywhere else that I've gone in this game has been just go do the dive. You don't run out of air, you don't face any challenges that are too difficult for you, you don't have to bring your vehicle, you can just go do it. And that's something that bothers me. And every time I see something in this game where it looks like I might have some fun, where it looks like I might be a challenge, I stop and I say, let's just try to bluff it. Let's just go through without even bothering to plan anything or to think about it, and it always works out. And to me that's really obnoxious, because the part I love about the original Subnautica was going out and like having to come back to the ship and get another breath of air and then go out again, or having to build another base just so that I could have pipes leading down into the cave, or planning out my route with my giant submarine and then getting out and examining the hull to see whether or not I could fit through. All of those things were what I loved about the original Subnautica, and the fact that they're not in this game keeps nagging at me. So it's a very smooth game. It's a very sleek version of Subnautica, and I think most people are probably going to be fine with that. But for me, it just means that the thing I liked isn't there anymore. However, the other thing I don't like is maybe more serious. You may have noticed, if you are familiar with my channel, that I have very strong opinions about narrative. And I really hate the narrative in this game. I can get along with a game that has bad narrative if I can ignore the narrative, but unfortunately the narrative in this game literally keeps calling you. Now, this is where we're going to spoil the game in earnest. I spoiled the play a little bit earlier, but now I'm going to spoil the actual story. So, you play a character with agency, and that's fascinating to me. You actually want to come down to this rock. You're searching for your sister, or rather, you're searching for what killed her. Your sister is dead, and the company won't tell you exactly what happened. They'll just give you some bullshit. So you want to know why your sister died, how she died, who's responsible for it. You want to know everything about what she was working on and what Altera is hiding. That's a really powerful thing to bring into the game. It means that we want to figure out what's going on. It gives us an excuse to engage with the surroundings, and for that it works well. But the thing is, that's also a very strong emotional plotline. My sister was murdered. The only family I have is dead now, and how am I gonna feel about that? How am I gonna respond to that? What sort of ache is going on inside me? How am I coping with the grief and the rage? This game basically just ignores that. You get, like, the facts about what happened to your sister, but there's very little emotion to anything. Your emotion is mostly, oh, I want to be helpful, which is not the right emotion for someone who's undergoing heart-wrenching grief to the point where they would literally hijack Altera vehicle and desperately get onto the surface and then ruin an entire corporation's planetary systems just to figure out what's going on. That takes a lot of emotion, right? You've got to care a lot to completely fuck up an entire planet to find out what happened to your sister.
Dangerous weather approaching.
So,
seek shelter.
Why is there no emotion to the story? And my thinking here is that it's because this was a very quickly developed game. It was fast, and it was put together on a lower budget than the original Subnautica, because, you know, a lot of the stuff that they used for the original Subnautica they could use again here, such as the landscape system and all the interaction stuff and all that jazz. They needed some assets, obviously, but it's not starting from scratch. So they had a streamlined production process, and I think that streamlined production process ended up resulting in a narrative that just doesn't work. Now, the problem I've got with this narrative is very simple. It's not that there's no emotion to it, because then I could just ignore it. It's that there's an Alan. So Alan is the AI alien, the architect, and you end up taking him on board into your head, like this is Cyberpunk 2077, and he talks to you all the time. He calls you up, and his little phone icon sits there in the corner ringing constantly, and he will explain to you very basic sci-fi concepts like he's reading them from Wikipedia. Now, normally I'd be like, whatever, what a waste. But here's the thing. Alan is an alien that is part of a communal species. His species doesn't understand what it means to be alone. They're always networked, and they don't understand individualism in the same way that a human does. He is now disconnected from that network. He's disconnected from everything he's ever known. He is profoundly alone. Does that remind you of anybody? Anybody else who recently lost every connection they had to another member of their species and is now completely alone? So, using Alan to reflect our own grief and our own attempts to cope would have been a very powerful tool. We could use a weird alien that can't understand what's going on and can't cope with being alone to highlight our own struggles without getting maudlin or pushing it. You know, because if it was just us, like, raging or whatever, it would feel forced and it would feel overwhelming and it would feel pushy. But if it's an alien who's going through something very, very similar, then we can use the fact that they are a weird alien that doesn't understand what's going on and can't cope to point out that we can't cope and we don't know what's going on and we are being overwhelmed and are non-functional. That is an emotional resonance that makes so much sense that I can't believe they didn't use it. Instead, Alan just talks about how he's communal, how species is communal. He explains it like he's reading it off of Wikipedia, and then later he explains it like he's reading it off of Wikipedia, and then in case you missed it, he explains it again like he's reading off of Wikipedia. Now, you can argue that maybe the ending, has something to say, but it's the game, the overall everything that's happening that matters most. The ending is just a final, half hour. This is even more annoying because the way that you find out what happened to your sister and everything that happened around her is so disconnected from the story of your attempts to come to terms with her death that it robs your character of all humanity, and you don't get any sense that we actually miss our sister, the reason we came to this planet, the reason we're destroying Altera's shit. It's such a huge missed opportunity. And again, if I could ignore it, that would be one thing, but I can't. Because he keeps calling up. Alan keeps phoning in and saying, "Hi, my name is Alan, and I should be the emotional center of this plot," which, helps you to come to terms with your own missing sister and your own grief. But instead, I'm going to read from Wikipedia. Here is what sci-fi communism is about. It's like, come on, seriously? Over and over and over and over. Exactly. Exactly, Mr. Fish. And once I realized that those were the only two things I had to say about this game, I figured I should just make a video saying those specific things. If you've gotten this far and you haven't played the game, I hope I haven't dissuaded you. I doubt you will be quite as nitpicky as me. I am really easy to annoy. Shock, right? Anyway, see you around.